everyone. Welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. I'm your host, Juliana. Hey everyone. At Zone to Speak, I know how important it is to stay healthy, strong, and ready for every ride, workout, and adventure. That's why I'm sharing discounts on products I personally use and love. Each one designed to support your performance, recovery, and overall well-being. Whether you are a serious athlete or just trying to feel your best. And remember, every time you shop using these codes, you are directly supporting the podcast and helping me bring more great conversations to life. Psych Plus, their smart pump is a game changer. Light, compact, efficient, and perfect for keeping your tires road and gravel ready. It's also ideal for travel as you can skip the CO2 canisters. You can even change your tire pressure on the go when switching between surfaces. Get 10% off the smart pump and 5% everything else. 15% off down the road cycling gear, beautifully designed and performance-ready apparel. 15% off New Zest, clean, plant-based protein and essential nutrients to fuel your recovery and daily energy. 15% off Oleo's wellness shots, adaptogens, nootropics, and functional nutrients to support performance, focus, and recovery. I take Oleo's daily in the lead up to any of my races, and I have the pre-ride and recovery shots ready for the weekend's big training rides. If you're looking for a clean, effective boost, Oleo's is it. 10% off Cold Age. High-quality supplements, including multivitamins, collagen, creatine, and more. I take their women's fermented multivitamin and creatine daily. 10% off Loop ear plugs, ideal for travel, sleep, sensory recovery, or managing noise at races. 10% off Clearly Not Coffee, a caffeine alternative made with mushrooms, cocoa, maca, and rhodiola. I use it every day for smoother energy, sharper focus, and better hormone balance. 10 pounds off Huel, nutritionally complete, high-protein, plant-based meals for when you are on the go and need something quick, satisfying, and healthy. Also great to take bikepacking. 10 pounds off Shokz headphones, the safest way to listen while you train with open ear technology that keeps you alert and aware on the road or trail. 35% off Frey Skincare. Skincare made for active people. I have used Frey for 10 years, designed to keep sweaty skin clear, fresh, and glowing. You will find all the partner links, discount codes, and instructions in the episode description. So go check them out and enjoy these perks. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome back to Zone to Speak. Today's guest is someone whose story pulled me in from the very first paddle stroke, Vedangi Kulkarni. At just 19 years old, she became the youngest woman to circumnavigate the globe by bike, covering 29,000 kilometers across 14 countries, solo. Her grit, fire, and unwavering determination are jaw-dropping. But she didn't stop there. In 2024, she set out again, this time chasing the world record for the fastest ride around the world. She's Indian, she's bold, and she's redefining what's possible, especially in a sport where women from South Asia are rarely represented. In this conversation, we will talk about her wild first ride around the world, what drove her to take a second attempt, and what it was like growing up in Pune, and what's next in her big, brave journey. Vedangi, welcome to Zone to Speak.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing introduction. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I'm truly amazed by you. I can't not even imagine looking at myself at 19, thinking about picking up a bike to go around the world solo. Tell me about growing up in Pune. Was cycling always part of your life?
No, football was there.
Wow, cool.
So when I was in school, I was like not super sporty. I I don't think I was very coordinated for a lot of things. It was quite funny. What I did do though, I was a musician. Um, so we have this keyboard instrument called harmonium. So I
Yeah.
used to play harmonium and
Wow.
sing. That was my thing. And I got into football. Just when I realized that when it's, like the PT period, which is when like, you play, I
Yeah.
realized that the guys used to play football and then the girls used to like sit around chat, or they used to play, I don't know, something that wasn't very fun, I guess, for me at the time. And yeah, I ended up starting to play football with the guys, and I was really bad at it. And I was like, you know what? Like, just in the playground next to this, they actually have like formal classes, and people actually go and play there. And there's a coach that you work with and things like that. And so that's what I started doing every evening. And then uh, one thing led to another, and that became the goal of my life. I think like when I was like 16 or something, I remember saying that I want to play football and represent my country in this sport. But then also, that was also kind of how I got into cycling, because I used to cycle to my football training and back. And then as I went on bigger teams and things, the traverse to the football training, like the commute kind of got longer and longer as well. So then it kind of became a thing. But it wasn't cross training, it wasn't anything. It was just like, oh yeah, this feels easy enough, that sort of thing. And with football, I was used to being so bad at every single skill that
No.
I picked up, um, that I almost got used to, okay, I'm not good at this, but I'm doing it. I'm
You're
here.
having fun. Yeah.
I'm part of the team. So I have a responsibility. So it was always that. And I was a goalkeeper. And I'm convinced that the reason I chose goalkeeping at the time was not only because I found running extremely hard. It's like a story of my life, but also because I used to like, you dive to get the ball and things like that. And we don't have the sort of lawn fields. We used to have like um, sort of solid kind of
Like
ground.
gravel.
Yeah, gravel, but with like, when it rains and then the ground sort of dries up and it's all cracked mud, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
And that hurts. And I used to sort of play in that sort of field, or even concrete. And I used to have like scrapes and things
Oh my
everywhere on me.
goodness.
And I remember I that was cool. I also realized it wasn't quite later on, but I don't know. I was convinced that like yeah, I thought that was cool. Um, but also I saw that as a way of finally making connections and friends, because I didn't have a lot of like really good friends in school, and it was kind of getting a bit sad. And growing up, you realize that the same people who hang out with each other in school sometimes hang out together for like the rest of their lives. And I always felt like I was missing out on those connections, missing out on friendships. And like I had like always had my father as example, who's had like such good friends, who would do anything for him, and he would do anything for his friends. And the families are so close and everything. And I was like, damn, like how do I make friends like that sort of thing. So
Were you
I've not
shy?
no, that's the thing. I've never been shy. I've always been like way too full on, and that's probably been the problem. Like, but I think yeah. So football was so sort of such a huge part of my life, and I used to also like write. So that was also something I did growing up. So yeah, playing music and writing. I hand wrote like a novel when I was in school, going through
Wow.
my teenage years. It was quite funny actually. And I used to write poems and send them to this local newspaper, which had like, there's like a supplemental paper at every newspaper. Um,
Yeah.
so that was like thing at the time. I used to submit poems for those newspapers. It was,
Oh my gosh, do you
I
still
my
have those? It must be fun to read them back
Unfortunately,
now.
unfortunately, my parents do have these in a folder. And actually, in the house that I grew up in, my dad had like put up all these on the wall. And I
Wow.
remember saying to my mom, I was like, "You gotta tell dad to take these down. I'm grown up now, and those are cringy. Like, I do not want to know what I wrote when I was lonely in my teenage years." But yeah, so I was actually at a sort of really big national camp sort of thing with football when I realized that it's not quite working out. Maybe it was the team dynamics, maybe it was me not having that confidence in myself or being able to um, be the person that I am and be very like unapologetically myself. I'm still not very good at it. I'm getting better though. But at the time, it held me back so much that I would just freeze. I wouldn't be able to stand up for myself. I was not very good at that stuff. So then I remember I was at this national camp and then, well, camp for national, so you represent your state, that sort of thing. And I called my parents and I told them to come pick me up because it was, yeah, just not working out. And it was quite funny because they came to pick me up, but by then I'd already made a plan of what I wanted to do next because I was like, I'm not very good at this. Yes, I want to do this and I can get better at this and I have a whole life ahead of me. But also, it's not, it doesn't feel quite like the place for me right now. So anyway, they came to pick me up, but by the time they did, I had made this plan that I wanted to ride my bike in the Indian Himalayas. It was quite funny because it was going to be a very short camp and it was going to be like screw this, I'm gonna go do something new. And it was going to be like a cycling thing. And I remember at the time looking at the distance, it was less than 100 kilometers, but over 3 days. And I was like, that's not enough distance. You're not going far enough. And because I was looking at it
You're
like,
already
okay,
ambitious back then.
yeah, that never changed, but it was so strange because I remember thinking, I was like, okay, so Pune, what's about 100 kilometers? 100 kilometers, a little bit west, and you will almost reach Mumbai. Like, what's the point? You have to go further than that. Anyway, I didn't realize that you were gonna go over like all these huge mountain passes and things. But the real revelation with cycling for me was when I actually got there. I was at this camp, and I went there. Um, and I didn't really know anyone. And I was like so excited that I didn't know anyone. It was like, this is amazing. Like, what's it going to be like? And then when we started riding, it just got from good to better. Like, the climbs were like really kind of steep and long. And we were on these like old mountain bikes that I was like, I'd never ridden a bike that big. It was crazy, and yeah, there was like a lot of over explanation because in my head it was like, oh, it's just riding a bike. But then there were people who had never ridden a bike before that were there, so they were taught how to
Wow.
brake on downhills and things like
Oh
that,
my gosh,
and it
how can
was
you learn how to ride a bike in the Himalayas?
I have no idea, but I think that was so badass of people who came
Uh,
there without having full knowledge of how to use the bikes that they were going to ride.
wow.
Because now these days I'm like, no, no, no. If a brand like if my sponsors were going to send me a new bike, I'm always like, oh, I gotta have trained on it before I race on it. That sort of thing. So at the time, like obviously going on like a sort of mini expedition and going on a bike that's only been given to you for this, and then just going all right then, like I guess this is it. But anyway, long story short, when I was there, those bikes, like, oh, they were so. It wasn't about the bike actually. It was about how it felt going up and down and like, just chatting to people. And I think suddenly, for the first time in my entire life, at that point, something felt easy and doable. I never had that before. Not with football, not with, I don't know, okay, fine, the music thing. That was quite, I think playing harmonium, that did come slightly kind of easy to me. But
You
anything
connected with the
physical.
bike and the nature.
It just worked. It was like,
Amazing.
holy shit, I don't have to try really hard. And it was funny because, with football, I had this thing where I used to struggle, but when I got something right, everyone else was relieved that I got it right. I was never like, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
never like, oh, thank goodness I got that. And then I was never like I was never self-validating. I was never like making myself feel good about something that I got after trying a lot. With cycling, that was different. I was climbing up and up and up, got to the top of something, and suddenly I was like, huffing and puffing. So it had definitely not come easy to me, but I was happy. I got to the top and I was like, shit, like
And
I
how
did
old
that.
are
My
you
legs
then?
did that. I was 16 or 17, something like that.
Okay, and
Um,
then
but yeah, it was sort of around the same time that I spoke to exactly the right person. The person that became like such a good friend, like a big brother to me. Um, I ended up speaking to him and I asked him, I was like, is there a longer thing to do? Because this bike riding thing seems really fun. And he said there is a longer way. There is this big highway that goes from, I was in a place called Manali, which is at the foothills, and there is a place called Leh, which is in Ladakh. So it's like in the sort of, I guess, heart of the Indian Himalayas.
yes.
And then if you want to go even longer, you can go towards Kashmir, so even further the other side, and you can sort of go across the Indian Himalayas. And he told me about this route and showed it to me on a map. And we spoke about mountains and outdoors and all things fun. Um, and I remember saying to him, can you give me a number? I want to, like, I need to convince my parents that this is the next thing I want to do. Like, how do we make it happen? Anyway, he said I could join as a part of the group. So, the camp that I was there in, it was hosted by Youth Hostel Association of India.
Okay.
So youth hostels, obviously, they are like a global thing, but the
Yeah.
Indian thing, they have like all these different expeditions going. And so he said that you can join this one, but when you're 18, because we don't allow anyone under
Oh,
18 to
bummer.
join. And I was like, well, that's a little bit shit. And so I said, my parents will sign anything. All I have to do is pitch it to them in the right way. They will sign anything if that means that I get to join this. And it was funny because the minute I mentioned to them, even they were like, yeah, that sounds great. You should do this.
Wow,
But
that's
then
great. So they
obviously,
were supportive. They were not skeptical or worried.
well, not when I was still planning to go with a group. They were supportive about that because so that's the thing, like the Indian parenting, the way of it goes that when it's a controlled environment, everyone's chill with, like, your parents will normally be chill with it.
Yeah.
So there's a coach present, there's instructors, there's something or another, there's guides, leaders, whatever. Mostly my parents would be quite chill about that. But because the association, the Youth Hostel Association of India at the time was saying that as someone who's not 18, I can't join,
Right.
then I said to my parents that I have the route. We have someone who's an expert in this. He was the first. I think he was the first Indian to qualify for Race Across America. Um,
Wow. Okay.
and he had even like attempted Race Across America, and he had won like long distance sort of races that happened in India and things like that. Anyway, like I was like, we have an expert here. He will help us, and I can do this by myself. And my dad, I remember, was like, I love the idea of you doing this. It's amazing. You should. And you can even do it by yourself, but maybe not fully by yourself. So we will, how about me and your mom, like, hire a vehicle, like, get a driver or something, and we meet you where you camp every night, and we meet you every now and again as you ride. You can be riding by yourself, but all of the other bits we will,
It makes
meet you so that,
sense.
yeah. And so at the time, even to me, I was like, that's not irrational, that's sensible. Like, I've
Yeah.
always had this thing, like, is this fear irrational or sensible? Is this kind of thing that's been told to me, like, is it irrational? Is it sensible? But what my dad said at the time, 100% sensible. Yeah, no, I don't know. I've never done anything like this. So I've never like been in high altitude like that. I was meant to go on like 5,500 meters altitude on some of those passes.
Wow.
Fair enough. Like, and so, anyway, actually ended up making this ride happen. And in between those times, actually, my parents helped me train for this. And this friend, his name is Sumit Patel, he told how to prepare for this. And my first long ride, which is funny, like I think about this and it's completely changed the way I see long distances. Because my first long ride was close to 100 miles long. It was actually, yeah, close to 150 kilometers. Um, so this friend had said that your parents will be in a car behind you, and your task is to go from your place cross two kind of, we don't call them mountain passes or anything because they're tiny. They're like 6 kilometer climbs and things, but we call them ghat. So ghat
Okay.
is like a big climb and a big descent, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So there were two of those, and my task was to go 150 kilometers to the top of this plateau, which was at what felt like significant elevation. But I think the elevation gain between my house and there um, was like 1,500 odd meters.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, I had to do that from my like house, my parents' place, to there and have strawberry and cream. So I had to like not only go there, but go there in a good time that places
Yes.
will be open and I can have strawberry and cream there. And that was the task. And it was funny because one of those climbs was like 15, 20 kilometers long. And I remember thinking, I was like, I've driven up these things before with my parents. These places are steep. So I was like, is this a good idea? But at the same time, I was like, no, no, this person knows the best, so we'll just go with it. And my parents were so excited. My dad was like taking photos of everything, taking videos of
How
me riding.
cute.
And honestly, they were so proud. And we would stop to have coconut water. And first it was like, oh, let's stop after every 10 kilometers because who knows what it's like to cycle 10 kilometers, right? Then there was like, oh no, okay, 10 kilometers was too soon. I wasn't tired yet. Let's try 30 kilometers. And it was sort of like that. And, it was like kind of trial and error. And then on the climbs, my thing was, oh, and I was told, like, okay, if you can't do a climb, you don't get off and walk. If you can't do a climb, you stop for a minute, have a drink, then you try. Like, you ride, you don't
That's
walk.
good.
That was the thing. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. Like, the only
It's a
thing
good
that you
approach.
learn from,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But the only thing that you learn from being bad at a sport for a really long time and not having that validation from anyone that you're getting any better at it is that you do learn to push yourself physically and you do learn to push yourself mentally because you always think, it's coming. The validation is coming. It will be there at some point. Someone will say that you're good enough. And so for me, being on these climbs and then going, okay, right, I had to stop. That's fine. I'll drink some water. And then keeping on going and having that feeling at the back of my mind, what it felt like being in the Indian Himalayas on that shorter trip and how happy I felt at the top of the climb. I almost had this thing that, okay, I can only stop once before getting to the top, not again, that sort of thing. And then
Yeah.
at the longer climb, I had this thing where I was like, right, if I'm stopping there, then the next time I stop has to be longer, after longer than how much I cycled before that, I guess. So say I cycled two
That's really good.
kilometers
I like
uphill.
setting those little goals,
Yeah, but
because you cannot
incremental.
think, what do they say? Like, climbing a mountain is like eating an elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So that was the thing. It was like, for me, it was like, right, 2 kilometers of going uphill and I've had to stop. Then the next stop I take has to be more than 2 kilometers. It can't be less. And so it was like incremental. And I think even at the time, I had this feeling that the more I do that, I'm getting stronger and stronger little by
Yeah. You were
little.
building. physical, but also mental strength.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I remember when I got to the top of that climb, I think there were three climbs actually, not two, but like the two were the major ones, but there was another third one which we don't talk about, but at the same time, we didn't discuss it when and my parents were planning this, but we did know that it exists, but we almost like ignored it a bit because we were like, it's small. If you think that is small, then everything else will feel decent, and it was quite funny because when I got to the place where I was meant to be, I I had bad saddle sores. I was on a new bike. I had bad saddle sores, and it was so funny because I have never been the one who celebrates a lot, in a like exaggerated way, but my parents are, so they celebrated that. Me, on the other hand, I just felt the deep satisfaction of I've just ridden a very long way from my home to this place that if you're driving, it takes so many hours to get to. And I rode all day and I'm here and it's possible. And it was like, what, 150 odd kilometers. And
It's the
I
huge
think that,
validation that you're waiting for all those football years, and you're
yeah. And it
finally
was like
like feeling good
under
about
my own
yourself of
steam.
doing
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fantastic. But also because of that, suddenly 150 kilometers at any given point of time, even today, it's a doable distance because first proper ride was that distance with that elevation and everything. So obviously, any other time that I'll ever have to ride that distance or I've ever had to ride that distance, it's just felt, oh, it's just around the corner. It'll be fine. I can do that.
And
So
from that, in 2 years, you were riding around 2, 3 years, you were riding around the world. You made headlines at 19 for cycling around the world. Can you take me back and from this big ride to what sparkled the idea of the around the world journey?
yeah, of course. So
And how did
obviously,
you plan the route? How did everything
yeah,
come to
of course.
life?
So this small ride led to my bigger 700-kilometer ride across the Indian Himalayas. When that was done, I moved to the UK. So I think an important factor to know in my story, I guess, with everything that I've done, it's actually not the bike riding. It's never been about the bike riding. It's been about everything else, almost everything else, I would say. Because I moved to the UK. I was 18 years old, literally 5 days after I turned 18. 12th of September, I turned 18. 17th of September, I landed in the UK. My family didn't fly with me, so my parents didn't come with me. It was just me. We didn't have any friends here. We didn't know anyone here. So I landed in Heathrow, and I didn't actually know how to get to the place where I was going to go to university.
What brought, oh, you were
I
going to university. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I was going to go to university here, and the plan was very football oriented. I was going to come to the UK, study sports management, and I was
Cool.
going to do all the international football coaching licenses, and then I wanted to go back to India and start a goalkeeper coaching academy. That was the dream. But then, yeah, I came here, and again, the whole thing with making friends, it was ridiculously hard. And it was funny because all I wanted was to make connections, make friends, and that sort of thing. And it was so hard because the culture is so vastly different. The boundaries are like so different. Like even now, I do certain
Yeah.
things, and my partner, he's British, and he will tell me, he'll be like, "No, you can't say that," or "Oh, you can't do that," or "Oh, like that's not a thing here." And I'm like, "Oh my God, like it's been 8 years. How am I so bad at this?"
Well,
But
because it
at the
is
time,
ingrained in you, it's your culture, just like me.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
Brazilian and I have lived in so many different countries. Like Brazilians are very touchy. For example, we hug and kiss, and we're like, oh my gosh,
it's
what are
not a
you
thing
doing?
everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, so it was wild to me, and it was crazy. Be- but then it was a lonely experience coming to a new country and seeing that people are different. I didn't even know what to wear to university, like because the school I went to was very like I guess, traditional.
Traditional.
So then, yeah, so then I was like, I'm not gonna wear that. But then, I had this fascination. I come to a new country and it's mostly like, it's a Western country, so it's gonna be safe. So I can wear whatever I want. I can wear short stuff and I don't have to worry about people staring. That one thing was so huge to me at the time that I used to wear like shorts in no matter which season it was, and I was extremely cold, don't get me wrong. So I used to wear like shorts, like cycling shorts but
It
without the
was just the
padding. So
freedom. You're celebrating the freedom. Yeah.
exactly, I think the first few years of me living in the UK were celebrating freedom. Even now, every time I head out, I'm just like, who's going to tell me to stop? Who's going to tell me no? Nobody. Just go. Yeah, and that I think so. That is actually so. That was the thing, right? Um, so the connections were hard, making connections, and then cycling became that thing because the same bike that I rode across the Himalayas, I brought to the UK with me. I put it together literally as soon as I found a way to finally get to Bournemouth, finally get to the place where I moved. And I put the bike together, and the same day I headed out, and I found out like where my university would be because I would be cycling to university every day. That was the thing, and it became a thing. Like, and then I was like, wait, this place is safe in the nights. That's insane. And then I used to go on night rides, and I wouldn't tell anyone that I was doing this. I didn't know anyone, so I was just like, who's gonna tell me to stop? I'm gonna go, whatever. And then, I used to do these things. And I remember, when the clocks went back, um,
Yeah.
did they go back or did they go
For
forward
daylight
in winter? That one.
savings, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when there were daylight savings in winter, I remember because it's 2 a.m., right? When it changes, or when it's
Yeah. Something
3 a.m.,
like
it becomes
that.
2 a.m., something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember I was so excited that I was riding my bike outside. I recorded a video and everything. I was so stoked that I was riding at that time of the night and like the time was changing and things like that.
That's so
I
cute.
wanted to. It was. I think I still have that video somewhere, and I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, naive 18-year-old Vedangi, what the hell? And it's quite funny. That ride and everything there, moving to the UK and everything, I wanted to do bigger things. And, I came here and I was a nobody. I was like, and it's this thing ingrained in me that I have to do something, be somebody that I'm proud of. So back then it was just like be somebody. Don't be a nobody. Like, you should have friends, you should have people, you should know things, you should do things, you should have a personality. That was like, all that I wanted. And then I guess that the sort of I wanted that so much that I started doing these random things that I have always wanted to do, never got a chance to do, never had the freedom to do. The overprotective childhood to slightly cool parents in the teenage years when they're like letting
Yeah.
me do things, but it still has to be all within control. So my whole thing all my life has been escaping the control, getting out, like doing, like being free. Um, and so I ended up signing up for London, Edinburgh, London. But I, again, didn't know how it was all going to be, how to train for this, how to prepare for this. So then I planned a 400-kilometer ride for myself that I had to do in one go. It was going to be
Wow.
from where I lived in south coast of England to London and back. Um, I'm going to cut a very long story short and say that I had an Apidura saddlebag and a backpack with me at the time. And I'd carried things that I would need for a 400-kilometer ride, or the things that I thought that I would need for a 400-kilometer ride. That was also the first ever time I was using clipless pedals. I had the Luke Keo pedals and
Okay.
like the Bond road shoes, and I remember how was that my first experience doing that is just wild to me.
It is
And
wild
anyway, and I kept crashing. I kept accidentally riding on
because you couldn't
motorways.
unclip.
Well, yes, couldn't unclip, but also the whole riding on motorways thing was wild to me because I didn't know that you can't ride on certain roads, for example.
My
For me, it was
goodness.
just like, this is just a bike lane because, yeah, I don't know, it
The
was just
shoulder,
different.
you think the shoulder is a
Yeah,
bike
yeah, yeah.
lane?
The shoulder was a bike lane
Oh my
because
gosh.
on motorways, the hard shoulder is huge. So it's so easy to just think that. But anyway, that day, I found myself in a little village where my bike broke down, and I was fixing the bike, couldn't get fixed, ended up knocking on a random person's house, and they very kindly invited me in, um, and we got chatting. And I told them, and then there was a map that was in front of me, and I told them that I was riding to John O'Groats, the other end of the UK, when the original plan was a 400-kilometer ride. And then from
Wait,
going
wait. So
from,
you changed the plan and you wanted to go
yeah,
even
yeah,
further.
that,
Wow.
yeah, but I didn't have enough things with me. I didn't have enough money and I didn't have any sleeping gear. So then I ended up doing this by sleeping in the bus shelters, or knocking on people's doors, hoping, I would get to stay with them, or
Wow.
just staying in really cheap like hostels and things. But that journey, I think, changed things for me because, it's late at night, you're scared, you're in a under a bus shelter, you're reading something on your Kindle because what else are you going to do? Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was I read Juliana Buring's book, This Road I Ride.
I'm mind blown. I mean, you're so young, doing all these brave things. I mean, I am scared to do those things today.
Yeah, but
So
as an adult, as a sort of, when you know things, then you start getting scared of things. That
I
was my thing.
guess, yeah. When
I
you're a
didn't
little
know
bit
of.
blinded and naive, then yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So,
true.
for example, with mountain biking, I see all these kids doing huge jumps and big features, and they're not scared. And I'm there standing at like the top of a feature, and I'm terrified. That's because I've developed that fear muscle, and I know that I know that that has consequences. But like, so at the time, at the age of 18, sleeping in the bus shelters and everything, the worst thing that happened to me was that I was extremely lonely. And so in those lonely moments, I read a book. And just as well, I read the perfect book. I read Juliana Buring's book, This Road I Ride, um, when she became the first woman to set the round the world circumnavigation record. And I told myself, if I get to John O'Groats, if I really get to John O'Groats under my own steam, I'll do it. I'll attempt the round the world record. I can get across the country. I can be in a new country within a few months of moving in. I can pull this off. Then of course I can ride my bike around the world. How hard can that be? And yeah, I got to
Powerful.
John
Wow, you're
O'Groats.
so courageous. It's so, so, so inspiring.
I don't know about courageous, but I was like, what did I have to lose? I had so much of that in my head. Like, why not? What do I have to lose? I
Yeah.
only have things to gain. And it was funny because even at that point, failure and embarrassment, which right now are big things for me. The day I found out that I do not stand a chance at the round the world record, my failure, like my fear of failure, but also the embarrassment that came from it, almost
No.
change things for me. But like, think of that, right? The 18-year-old sitting at John O'Groats, calling her dad and saying, "Dad, I'm going to ride my bike around the world, and I want to try and be the fastest woman to do it." I'll be 19, and we know of people who have ridden around the world at 19. So it's not impossible. We know it can be done. It was a guy, and I'll be a girl. Like, what's the difference? It'll be fine. And so. And my dad being so chill about it. So at the time, it was like 3 in the morning in India. So he was like his response was quite mellow. But then he was like, "Yeah, whatever, okay, yeah, good night. I'm sleeping," that sort of thing. He went to bed. I did my own thing throughout the night, and I
Vedangi
think
in
even
the ideas, but he knows you deliver. He knows you
yeah, yeah, yeah.
execute. Yeah.
But it's funny because even in the like sleepy, hazy sort of moment, my dad was like, "You're in Scotland. Try the whiskey. Try the scotch." Like it was like, "Do something new." And it was funny. So he went to bed. I was like, "Oh, okay, this is a thing." Like because I didn't drink at the time, and I didn't know what people drank when they had alcohol. So that was like another weird thing that I didn't know. Um, and so I remember sitting in like a sort of place there, and I was like, "Hey, I've just done this, and um, I've heard Scotland is known for Scotch and whiskey. Like, what do I try? Like, how does this work? And I remember someone like gave me some stuff to try, and I just remember there was like heat in my body. It's insane.
Yes.
Anyway. Next morning, I woke up and my dad had sent me links to all these people like Mark Beaumont, like Julian Abiuring, like, Sean Conway. He sent me all these links of people who have ridden their bikes around the world solo and how they did it. And he almost gave me like homework. So it's like, read
Yeah.
all of
What are
this,
you signing up for here?
yeah, yeah,
Check
no,
it
it
out.
wasn't even that. It was like, talk to these people how you can do this. Like, get in touch with them. Like, learn how to make this happen in a proper way. Figure out how much money it's going to take and how you're going to raise it. Because ever since I was a kid, I used to pitch things to my dad, like, like businesses, and he would help me, like, figure out a business plan. He would be like, he'd teach me how to make a business plan out of it, and almost like, how much money you're going to need for it, how you're going to raise it, and things like that. And I think that, I don't know, like, I almost, probably even then, I should have known that I would end up being an entrepreneur, like, but like, so this was it. And then that was it. Like, that morning, the next morning after I read John Grewitz, I was like, this is happening. I'm riding my bike around the world. And then it became a thing. Like, then it became a thing where I was talking to people. I was like, oh yeah, like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm planning on breaking the round the world record. And then yeah, it was like 2018. So I turned 19 in 2017, but when I was starting my ride, I was still 19. When I finished my round the world ride back then, I was 20. And yeah, that sort of is how it all kicked off. This whole round the world obsession is where it kicked off. And I had this thing in my head where I'm spending all this money, I'm raising all this money, I'm spending all this money. The route that I don't just want it to be the most straightforward. I also want to look at places, like go see places that I've looked at the map and been fascinated at one point or another. I want to go somewhere that I've always dreamed of. Like, the Nordic countries for me, that was a huge deal. So I was like,
Take this
never been
opportunity,
to,
yeah, to see
yeah,
everything you
yeah.
want. Yeah.
And never been to Sweden, never been to Finland, like, never been to Russia, like, never kind of been in those proper wild bits. So I want to go there. I want to see what it's like. And then even like across, so Canada, I had Canadian visa at the time. So that was my thing with my Indian passport. My whole route, even for this ride and last ride, planning route involved figuring out where I need a visa and how long it's going to
Yeah.
take to get a visa. Because every visa I need, I'm submitting my passport. Then the passport will take a
Oh,
month to
yeah.
get
So
back
then
to
it's
me.
held. Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah. So then, and then look at how many other visas I have to apply to, and then am I going to do that for every country? Are there any e-visas that I can get? Where can I use the fact that I live in the UK towards getting the visa and things like that? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
It
how I
adds
plan my
so
route.
much logistics to it, that other
Mm.
passports don't go through it and don't even realize.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember at the time, like the likes of Mark Beaumont and Juliana Buring, and I'd like get in touch with these people and I'd ask them all the questions, all the questions that I had.
That's good that they
Everyone was
were able to
so,
be a resource for you.
you know what? Everyone who is someone, I've probably gotten in touch with them asking them for help. Everyone helped, like so, so, so generous, like in helping me out with whatever I needed, whether it was like saying my name in the right room at the right time, or it was teaching me how to do a sponsorship proposal, or, you know, uh, I didn't, it was just, I, I think of those days sometimes, and I'm like, it's a little bit silly that, like, right now I'm all about preparation and this and that. I was really not at the time. And yeah, I learned the lesson the hard way, but at the
Well, yeah,
same
you
time, there
didn't
was,
know, so you're doing what you thought was
yeah,
important.
yeah. So for
You're
me,
you're
it
just
was
gonna
like,
get on your bike and paddle. That's it.
but then that's the thing though, like I think even then I figured out that riding my bike will be the easiest thing I do when it comes to doing these big expeditions. And so yeah, like that's my I plan my route based on everyone else's suggestions, but also where I wanted to go, what I wanted to see. Um, and my start line and finish line, that was a funny thing because I was like, okay, like there are countries which give me e-visa. I didn't know that. I always thought it was all about stamped visas. So when I found out that Australia and New Zealand give you e-visas, right away I decided that I was going to start and finish my ride in Australia. But I didn't do it in the middle of Australia. I did it like from Perth.
Okay.
And it sounds it sounds sensible, but when you think
Yeah.
about it, I'm gonna finish somewhere at the end of another continent, and I'm only flying a
Oh,
very
yeah.
long
Then you
way
have,
to finish where I started.
yeah.
Didn't think of that at all. And it was quite funny. But yeah, anyway, started and finished in Perth at the time, rode across Australia, so from Perth to Sydney, flew to Wellington, Wellington to Auckland, flew from Auckland to Vancouver, so Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. And then from Squamish, I rode all the way to Halifax. But like I did like a little squiggly way in the middle because I had to add up distance because I couldn't get my US visa, which was
Man.
also the case this time. I still didn't get my US visa.
Oh,
But
no.
yeah, squiggly way to the end of Canada, so Halifax. Flew from there to Iceland and
Okay.
then tried tried to cycle across Iceland, failed because I got hit
Was
by a
it the
car,
weather?
got a whiplash, and had horrible weather. I think that's the worst rain I've ever had to deal with. No, I can't say that I live in Scotland. Never mind. It was horrible. It was windy. It was horrible, but there was like a nice gap somewhere where I went. I was staying in like a hotel where I could book like there's tour buses that take you to see Northern Lights.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, after I had quit my Iceland leg, I got back to Reykjavik and I was like, shit situation, but I'm not going to get any records anymore because by this point, I think Jenny
Might as
Graham
well
was close
enjoy
to
it.
breaking. Yeah, yeah. Jenny Graham was close to breaking a record, and I was like, "This is great, actually, because now I can actually go to see Northern Lights guilt-free." So I went
That's a
to
good
see Northern
attitude.
Lights, and also my flight out wasn't for another couple of days or something. So I was like, "I've got time. It's fine." Um, Went to some Northern Lights. It was great. And I think it was back then that I decided that I will live somewhere north at some point because, yeah, I mean, even now, like where I live, I decided to sort of live here. I was dependent on that. Is there going to be snow and can I see Northern Lights? That sort of thing, which you can. Both are true for
Wow.
Scottish Highlands. Um,
Yeah, but I
but
guess
yeah,
it's
then
hard to plan your route also around the seasons because you hit Iceland, because you're in Australia, which is southern hemisphere, and then you go to Iceland, northern, and that's really tough winter.
yeah, so I was there. I was in the Southern Hemisphere in their winter, which was manageable. It was actually great. I loved it. Um, but yeah, I was in Canada at the best time of the year. It was great. But then they also had some of the worst wildfires. The other day I read they were quite bad actually. Like the 2018 wildfires, they still were quite some of the worst, I guess. I don't know. Maybe
Man,
maybe
that's
it was
awful.
something else. But I had a lung infection from riding in those. That was a bit awful because lung infections are not nice. I came to a point of collapse on a few occasions.
My
Oh,
goodness.
I also had an incident with a bear. Got chased by a bear.
Yeah, I
Um,
read that. I was gonna ask you. Yeah, but that was on your first attempt, the bear
First
encounter.
attempt, but also first attempt and the only time I've been to Canada. So
Okay.
I think it's quite cool to
How
when
did
I
you
think
escape
of it
from the
that
bear? Like, did you just freeze or?
no, there was a lorry that saved me. There's a lorry coming
Oh,
from the other side,
oh,
and then obviously the screeching of brakes, the honking, and everything kind of was
okay.
enough to scare the bear away,
How
luckily.
scary. Wow.
It was incredibly scary. But I had like this huge adrenaline rush at the time. And I remember I locked myself into this long drop toilet at a tourist information center at the top of this hill that I was going up. Um, and I had this SOS, like I had a spot tracker. I pressed the SOS on it. And it was funny because for that bit, I had a couple of friends actually filming me.
Okay.
Um, and I went to uni with these friends, so they had flown over. Um, and I think this footage is still out somewhere with one of them, but I was in such a weird place that I was talking things like, I'm gonna lock myself in here, make this my home, make like a how I'm gonna keep my food safe, where I'm gonna sleep, and how this is going to be my forever home. And I'm never getting out of this long drop toilet. This is it.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah, it really
I
got
was
into
like,
you. Yeah, it
yeah,
was a
I
little,
was
maybe
like,
a panic mode kicked
yeah, it was
in.
insane, and I was like smiling, and I was hysterical. It was weird. I've looked at photos from that, and I remember thinking, Jesus, like what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
But that's what.
What helped you get out of that mindset? Maybe because your friends were there, or how did you come down and go
Um,
back to yourself?
how did I? I So that day when I got back on the bike, I couldn't ride at all. I had to find a hotel somewhere because I tried to pedal and my legs were shaking. I just fell. It was like my legs were jelly. And I think after that, I was just singing to myself a lot because something like this happens and you automatically read about all the worst stories of that incident having gone wrong. And I guess it's just a way you deal with fear. I got chased by a pack of dogs in Ladakh, and I spent all night reading about packs of dogs killing people and shit.
Wow.
So it's like, when you feel a certain way and you make it worse. It was one of those weird self-sabotagey things.
Okay.
And so, but then the one thing that came out of it was that I read that when you make a lot of noise, the bears are aware that you're there and they want to approach you. And so then I started singing to myself and making a lot of noise, and I had a whistle on my little uh, hydration pack, and I kept like whistling and things. But yeah, it was quite a breath work, that going up and down the hills, and then also singing and whistling and things. It was quite something. But yeah, and then also, then I was across Canada, then across the whole of Europe. So I started from Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Russia. And then the thing was, so okay, yeah. So actually, in Spain, I got mugged at knife point. So I was held at knife point. I got mugged. I was beaten up, and this was like just
What?
it was unlucky, and I don't even know what to say. It was a shit situation.
Wow, I
And
can't believe they physically hurt you as well.
yeah, it was actually it I think at the time I put this thing in a little box, and I was like, this can go in the fear box. I don't need this right now.
Well,
And
I don't know. I was going to say that's good, but I guess, I mean, of course you have to process it. But since you are in this journey, I guess it is better to put it in a box and not think about it so you can continue.
yeah, yeah. So it was actually I remember I had like some incredible moments of clarity when this whole ordeal was ongoing.
But they didn't take your
Um,
bike.
no, my bike wasn't taken, but a lot of money was, and because it was funny now that I think of it, maybe it was all like related, but I think it was all related anyway. But I was in this little village that I don't remember, and I was planning to like ride through the night because I felt quite okay at the time. And someone told me that I should get some cash because there was like a pub sort of situation. I don't remember it very well what it was, but I remember saying, um, like having my food there and everything, and the person there was a person that said that I should withdraw some cash because the place where I will be going, the villages won't have um any
Credit
cards,
card,
like,
card
card
machine.
machines and
Yeah.
things. And like, if like in case anything happens, like cash is like the way you get out of things and stuff like that. So I did withdraw cash, and then all of that cash was gone. So kind of, I do think that there was something to do with that, but it was at the time. I think yes, I got mugged, I got beaten up, I was like thrown to the side of this ditch thing on the side of the road, like pushed off that, and the bike was on top of me when I was up. But then the thing was, yeah, like a really, really bad thing happened. But back, when I was conscious, I got back to the road and I pushed my bike in the direction that seemed obvious at the time. I was like, okay, my stuff is sprawled in that direction. Maybe that's where I was going. I don't know. It was quite wild. Um, Went to a gas station, and at that gas station, the guy there was so nice. He was the one who, there was a language barrier. We didn't understand each other, but he was the one who helped me out. He was the one who like tried to figure out what had gone wrong. Him and this family that we ended up speaking with, where we were having coffee because he thought that would help. They ended up all taking me to a hospital, and that's where we figured out that I had a concussion. That's why I couldn't remember things very well, and that's why I was like saying the same things over and over again, but not in a correct order, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at least, I mean, that was, of course, something horrible and could be traumatizing, but you also found
It was traumatizing.
kindness,
I think
unexpected kindness in the world.
that was it though. The unexpected kindness. Like those people checked in on me until I got like, out of Spain. They're like really, really nice people. And yeah, so because of that though, I also, it was all around this time that I had this whole thing where, oh yeah, and also a lot of things were gone. Some electronics were gone, and and just really random things. And I remember thinking, I don't think I should be doing this as a record anymore. And so a couple of days after that, I was like, um, I had not only announced, like, because before that I was like, I know I'm not gonna get the record anymore, but I can just still ride my bike. I don't have to tell everyone about it. But then a few days afterwards, I actually like put it on my socials and everywhere. I made it quite obvious that not gonna track anything anymore, like, not gonna have anything out there. This is not a record anymore. I'm just riding my bike around the world, getting to the finish line. That's my goal. But because the concussion and all these injuries like slowed me down so much,
Yeah.
by the time I was in Finland, it was winter. Sweden and Finland, it was winter. Uh, and I was about to go to Russia. So while my Russian visa was being processed in Finland because the previous one ran out, um, I went to the Arctic to do some like, basic winter survival sort of thing, to learn
Wow.
how to deal with or I guess survive in Russian winter.
Extreme
Um,
weather. Wow, that's
yeah, yeah, because
incredible. What an experience.
yeah, that was actually, I was well proud of that because as long as I've known, I've always told my dad that I want to do something in the Arctic and do more things in the Arctic actually, like, and I had never been to the Arctic at this point, so you can imagine the fascination that I had going somewhere where like there was very limited daylight, there was snow everywhere, there was ice everywhere. I'm just there. Like it was great. I I still kind of think of it as um like I always think of it as like I've done a lot of brave things in life maybe, but that was like where I felt at my bravest because I was like, I know this is going to be horrible and hard, um and I'm sort of mini semi preparing myself for it. And yeah, like those like winter survival sort of little course situation was quite cool. I just couldn't believe that that was happening. I was so fascinated. Anyway, ended up actually doing halfway across Russia. In winter, it got down to like -20 at one point.
And you had the right gear for it.
Mostly, yes. I didn't have the right. I had the right graded sleeping bag, but nothing else. Like, as in,
Wow.
my tires were suitable, my bike was semi-suitable. I had bodged my bags to be suitable, and anything extra that I was carrying had to be in a dry bag, bungee tied to the fork of my bike. So, um, yeah, it was a bodge setup, but it worked for where I was going.
And the Arctic
And now
training really was
it
helpful to
just
go through
it's
Russia.
it helped me keep myself warm and safe. It didn't help
Very
me be
important.
more efficient. Yeah, yeah. I wasn't more efficient, but I was warm for most part, and I was safe. And I, if I found myself in dangerous situations, I would know how to get myself out of those. So that was there. So those were like the main bits that I think mattered for the Russian segment. There was a point where a five-star hotel in Samara hosted me for free. It was so good.
Wow, what a
Like, imagine,
luxury.
I know, imagine like camping and doing whatever for all these um days, and then suddenly like a five-star hotel is hosting you for free. It was insane. They even made a they even made like this cake for me, and they had given me all like this big hamper with all sorts of things like goodies in it. It was so cute. Like I really enjoyed that. Um, but yeah, and then from Ufa I flew to India, and then
Okay.
even in India it was quite funny because my ride across India, my parents were like there with me.
Of course.
So they were like they my parents have this thing that if I'm doing anything in India, they will be there. Like even now, even like just now, like they were there, for pretty much the whole ride. My dad came through towards the end, and he rode with me to the finish line, which was quite fun. But yeah, back then, like my mum had driven like I don't know 2,000-3,000 kilometers to pick me up at the airport in Delhi, and then to drive to the place where I would start in India. And this was all like happening within a very short space of time. So it was like, for me, it was endurance riding. For my mom, it was like endurance driving.
Driving.
So she drove the three of us. So mom, dad, and I. We all drove to the place where I started. I think it was in Ahmedabad in the state of Gujarat, and then yeah, a little ride across India, where I again got heat exhaustion. I can never escape this. Heat exhaustion is the one thing I've struggled with.
You
Like
seem to be doing well with the cold more than the heat.
so
Yeah.
much better, honestly, so much better. But then even in cold, like I've kind of wrecked my hands over the time with Arctic expeditions or all sorts of cold things, and sometimes doing them in the wrong, I guess, conditions and things. I've had this a few times where my hands now don't kind of function very well. They get cold really quickly, and I have to manage my body temperature well. But in the heat, I struggle so much. So in India, at the time, I got food poisoning, I got heat exhaustion. I was just like, because I had gone
Well,
from like -20, -10,
it's
minus
a
ridiculous
huge
degrees
difference.
to
Yeah.
+35. And yeah, so by the time I finished my Indian leg in Kolkata at the time, and I had to then only fly to Australia and finish in Perth. So like I had to ride like 10 kilometers, or I don't know, is it 10 or 15, something like that, to my finish line, which was hilarious. Like when you think about it, that you're
Yeah.
flying a very long way to just
To
finish
drive
what you
to
started.
ride 10 kilometers. Yeah.
Yeah, to officially finish. And I did it at the worst possible time. So
Why
the
is
day I
that?
finished, Christmas Eve. I
Oh,
finished on the
wow.
evening of Christmas Eve. Everything was closed, and on Christmas Day when I woke up, I was like, how the hell do we celebrate? Like, what? I don't know anyone here. No one knows me. Like, I can't, like, none of my friends are here. They're all in the UK. My
A
parents
little
are
bit
here. Like,
anticlimactic, you'd say, because you're there
yeah,
alone.
but also at the age of 20, like, celebration for you is like when you're with your friends and when you're like, you've got some drinks going and things. And
Yeah.
so on like Christmas Day 2018, I was in Perth at a really nice hotel because my dad was like, "Well, you've just finished a very thing." So my dad was like, he was celebrating and going like, "All right." So he had done a really nice thing, booked us three in a nice place, and the only thing open was, and everyone in the hotel knew what I'd just finished doing. And my record, like the youngest woman to do it, that thing was always going to be unofficial because now Guinness do that record. At the time, they didn't. So it was quite funny though. I spent that entire day because the hotel was like, drinks on us sort of thing. And
Nice.
so I got very, very drunk with my dad. It was like endless strawberry daiquiris coming in. It was
Wow.
great. Um, but yeah, it was quite like when I think about it, it was quite cool. But then I finished that really big ride and then I came back to university. Oh,
Yeah.
actually no, I went to India and found out that my visa has run out.
To go
So
back to university?
yeah, so
Oh,
I had to
man.
apply for a whole other UK visa. Um, And that was less than ideal for two reasons. So it took a month. So for a month, January 2019, actually, it took pretty much that whole month for my visa thing to happen. But then also, um, it was, I still wasn't like with my uni friends. I still wasn't like celebrating in any of that respect. It was still like an unofficial thing. And, you know, sometimes you do big things and you've done something that's admirable and things like that. But then when you can't prove things the right way, for other people, it's almost not real. And so a lot of that happened back then. And, some like it was, I guess, yeah, I
Yeah,
also
maybe it was a
learned
cumulative from your football days, from not feeling validated when you finally
God, it was exactly that. And
reached
it wasn't,
certain levels, and then now you did something
yeah, and it
major.
became, yeah. And it was like, if no one is talking about it, then did it even happen? And then I had to really work hard to bring myself out of that because for me, it was like if people that are somebody in the sport aren't celebrating something really big that I have done, then is it even like a big deal? It was that sort of thing. And then it took me a long time to realize that it doesn't matter. How did I feel about it? You know, do I look at the world map, think about a certain place, and have good stories to tell? Have I met good people? Have I made those connections that I wanted to make? Do I feel good about myself? Like, and it
Yeah, I mean,
sort
you're
of came
so
down to
young,
that.
and I'm glad you came to this realization that you did this for you and you have those
It took a while
stories.
though. I always think that because it was unofficial, that record, and because there was no real on paper thing that I've done this, because there was not a lot of data that could be validated and things like that,
You didn't have
it
a bike
all
computer, or why there's
no,
no
I
data?
I did, but like when you yeah, like at the time I didn't know that Garmin Connect was a thing. So you know how I uploaded bike data, like my data? I
Yeah.
used to find the business center thingies in hotels, and
Yeah.
I used to go there with a little USB stick, and I used to like yeah, kind of upload from that to that, and then email it over to me or something. It was so stupid. I mean, it was silly. I don't know what to say. Um,
So you did this at 19, finish at 20, goes back to university, processes all this in your head because you're not getting the validation you thought you would have, but then you come to
well,
peace
COVID
with it.
happened
Oh yeah, then COVID happened. But
that
then
year.
when did the 2024 happen that you set off again to break the women's record, what made you want to go back for a second time?
Yeah, so a few other things happened in 2019. So for example, I went back to uni, couldn't get
Okay.
on really well with it, so decided to yeah, dropped out and had to get a different visa for the UK, started a business here. Um, but then at the same time, I also attempted Silk Road Mountain Race. For the first time in my entire life, I had a proper full sponsorship, and I couldn't have fallen on my face worse. So I got to the start, on my way to the start line, I crashed. I hurt my ribs. I got another concussion. I can't believe I'm saying this.
No.
Within a space of a year, I think the last one I had got in Spain was like October, and this was in August. So October 2018 and then August 2019. So like second concussion. It was quite bad
Wow.
actually. And I let so many people down. And I like I'm pretty sure like I kind of, sort of went in like this little bubble that I didn't want to get out of. I was like, no one can ever know that I exist, sort of thing. Like, it's so bad. Like, grounds follow me up. It was so
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Oh, no. No, it's not.
And and I went to see my dad in Oman. My parents at the time lived in Oman. And so
Okay.
then I went to see my dad in Oman, and then I remember like we were like cooking together and things like that. And I sort of, didn't get over it, but sort of got in a better place, came back to the UK, and and then I think it was December, like, by then. It was yeah, towards the end of the year. And that was actually when like people were hearing things about COVID and everything. And at
Yeah.
some point, then I applied for my next visa, or like I was like, okay, this is what I want to do long term in the UK. So this is how I wanted to go. And obviously COVID shut things for a long time. In it was in the COVID time that I went from my student accommodation to living with my partner, who I'd
Okay.
met just before I did Silk Road Mountain Race, attempted Silk Road
Okay.
Mountain Race. And so I moved in like in like 2020, and then we also like I got into mountain biking very much, and that became a thing. Then I was mountain biking. I was still doing long distance stuff just to remind myself that I can,
You can
and
do this.
still, yeah, doing lots of like I planned like this whole route in the southwest of the UK, because when I had first come to the UK, I would look at a map and look at places with funny names, or places that I'd read in a history book or geography book, like when I was growing up or something like that. And, I wanted to connect all these nice places that I um, loved visiting when I had just come to the UK. And I made this like little route in the southwest. It was like gravel slash road. It was really fun. And so like I did things like that in the COVID years,
Nice.
but it was I kind of got a bit lost. I always say like I really lost my early 20s to COVID. Like the
A
ages
lot of
between like
us.
20,
Yeah. It was
yeah,
tough times for
between
a lot of people.
yeah, between 21 and like 24, 25, like it just, yeah, felt quite here, there, and everywhere. But then, yeah, moved to Scotland in like early 2022, and yeah, like again, mountain biking. Kind of, it came to that. Like, I organized a mountain bike race as well, and it was a downhill mountain bike race. It became the first sort of race for adaptive mountain bikers.
Oh, cool.
Everyone raced the same track. We all raised money for my friend who had just had a mountain biking accident, and she was unfortunately paralyzed from that. And this whole race was for raising money for Wings for Life and for her fundraiser. But it was remarkable. She's a remarkable young woman. Like, she raced there that day when this was happening. it was, I think, 6 months from her accident. And where this race happened was where she had her accident.
Wow. So she
And she
recovered
was,
from the paralysis.
no, no, she raced on an adaptive bike.
Oh, okay, okay.
That was the thing. That was the reason we had like a whole category for adaptive bikes. Everyone raced the same track. And like, it was probably like the most women ever seen at like a downhill race, and it was a very sort of cool vibe, and everyone was there to support a good cause. Yeah, that was great. And then at the time, I wasn't very much into like I didn't do big things like big features or anything in on mountain bikes because I was still like very scared of that. But
Yeah, it's scary.
watching everyone ride that weekend, that was so inspiring to me. And and everyone went above and beyond to make that day happen. Like my friends who I barely got a chance to say hi because I was organizing the prizes, or I was figuring out where the where like marshals would go, or trying to figure out why the walkie-talkies weren't working at one point, and this and that, like like at an event everything is happening all the time.
It's full on.
It's
Yeah.
very full on. So I was like, so then I didn't even get a chance to say hi to my friends who had come from very like far distances to help me out. It was great actually, that event. But yeah, shortly after I moved to Scotland, and up here I sort of rediscovered that joy for everything. Well, moved here in winter, and I cannot explain how hard it was to do any work in that time because, yes, obviously, work in a practical way with the freelance nature of writing or that sort of thing, or on-screen work, but the amount of snow we had, I was just outside all the time. The minute it was snowing, I was outside riding my bike. Like, it was magical, and I was just mesmerized.
Wow.
I've never felt more connected to what's around me than when we first moved to Scotland. And
Wow.
every time I have to, even now, go out on like a training ride or something, I just remind myself that, like, when I don't want to go out and then I've forced myself out and I'm just grumpy, I'm like, don't be grumpy. Like, look around. Like, we
Yeah.
moved here from a very long way. But all of this was very connected to the second round the world, right? Because I had rediscovered what riding long distances means for me, what freedom means for me, what,
It
I
makes so much
I
sense now that you put all of this together. Yeah, you're
yeah.
confined and you're trying to figure everything out after the high of finishing
Mm,
something huge, but not having the celebration you expected and all of this. And then
yeah.
you have the freedom. Of course, you have to try the around the world again.
So yeah, like it was for me, it was like I will attempt the record again because, yeah, at the age of 19, I probably didn't stand a chance. But now I'm 25 and I'll be
Oh
stronger,
my
I'll
gosh,
be
don't even say
better.
that. At the age of 19, you rolled around the world solo. I mean, this is so mind blowing. Forget about the record. Just doing it, it's amazing.
It didn't feel the actual ride felt so good, but oh my God, I tortured myself after I was done. I was like, why couldn't I just be better and more transparent about how I was sharing my ride? Why couldn't I? There was so many, like, there was so many what ifs. There was so many,
Very
like,
hard on yourself.
I yeah, I am. I don't know what to say, but for this ride, I was like, I want to train hard, do this, do that, and I want to attempt the round the world ride, and I want to do this again. And I I had this thing in my head that I'm not doing it for a record, and I think that's bullshit. The reason I say it is because of how I felt when I realized that a lot of things are going wrong and I'm not quick enough and I'm not going to make up the time needed to get any record anymore. I think how I felt then is very, it told me so much about myself. that I hadn't realized. Because before you begin anything and you're talking, now I realize a lot of it is absolute bullshit. A lot of it is like, this is a, the version of me that doesn't know anything yet. Um,
But
and
that's
I have this
amazing to
thing.
have this clarity.
Yeah, but every time I sign up to something new, I almost erase everything I've done before that. So when I made that decision that I wanted to ride my bike around the world again and I wanted to attempt this record, I erased the fact that I'd ever done that before, erased the fact that I'd failed at Silk Road Mountain Race, erased the fact that like I had tried and failed at other things in the past. Oh yeah, I kind of missed a step somewhere. I did get a record. When I was 17 and I did that ride across the Himalayas.
Yes.
In 2023, I attempted that highway, the foothills to the Himalayas, to Heart of the Himalayas, the Manali Leh highway, and I did it with like fully supported and everything. Um, and I did get that record at the time. I did it like the long way. I did it like via all the mountain passes that come along the way, skipping the tunnels, and I did get a record at the time. So I had one win, but in those, I don't even know, between 2019 and 2023, like that was like my only win almost. And when I got that record, again, I didn't celebrate. Like for me, it was like, okay, you really prepared hard for something and you got what you wanted. It was almost a lesson. It was like, this is what the rest of what I do is going to be like. I will say yes to opportunities. I will say yes to doing big things. I will work really hard before it because this is what happens when you really work hard for something. You get
You have to put in
close
the
to,
homework.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So this was it. Like that was when I sort of decided that, right, this is happening. And then preparing for around the world, it was great. Like there was so much indoor training that I hated, but there was also so much of exploring my local area, but also doing new things. And, um, there is something about going to the gym and doing random workouts that aren't, on the machines and things. And you're just like, I used to be so scared of these things. I used to be like, oh, I don't want people looking at me. I don't want to look silly. I don't want to, or like, in the mountain biking terms, I don't want to look like a Joey. And and then like and then going there and putting yourself outside your comfort zone and even doing like a random workout that is good for your long distance riding, but it's different, it looks weird, and you think, oh, this is actually not that bad. I'm doing my own thing, working for my goals,
Yeah.
and this is what it feels like. So it was like a series of, this is what it feels like. So when I failed at a 3-hour indoor workout, which was meant to be really hectic, I failed by 2 minutes, say. I didn't finish it because I didn't have it in me. This is what it feels like to push that hard. When I sort of um, tried to do all of these other things, like all the cross training, and didn't feel strong enough or something.
That's
Or
the build up. And
exactly,
that's why I'm
exactly,
saying you're so
work to
hard on
failure.
yourself. You need to, yeah, there's the build up to it and learning
Yeah,
experiences. Yeah.
but that was the thing. It was those series of, this is what it feels like to work towards something really big. And it was that awareness that I felt like this time I had in every step of the way, you know, where even when I was on the ride and things were going wrong, even then I was like, it's okay. Like we we feel strong. Like, yes, there's heat exhaustion, a lot of throwing up, a lot of not being able to keep food down, a lot of toilet chasing, a lot of visa issues, a lot of being detained at borders, a lot of dealing with creepy people every now and again. But like this is what it is like to ride your bike around the world.
Yeah,
This
because
is
you
what
have the
it's meant to be
experience and
like.
now you
Yeah.
know. Now, this second time around you knew what to encounter and how to handle things better and not let this get you down.
There was some context, right? I knew what the numbers meant on my bike computer. I knew when my heart rate says a certain thing. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Like, I knew what all these things meant. I knew when, like, the cadence, for example, I knew what I had to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was so magical knowing what I'm doing. Like, it was almost that step up from the naive me to shit, I actually do know what I'm doing now. Like I do know what it's gonna mean to start in the middle of monsoon on the east coast of India where monsoon hits the hardest, there's cyclones and shit. I know what that's gonna do to me. I know what the weather is gonna be like. And all of those decisions when it was 45 degrees outside, I got heat exhaustion. I was deciding to ride in that. Everything was a decision that I was aware of, and it was great. It was like,
Incredible.
it was
And
almost like actions have consequences, that sort of thing, but a series of those things, and almost like, this is a good thing. This is making me stronger. And in the moment, I'm having a shit time, and it's okay. But it'll get
you're going to
better.
overcome that. You know the ups and
Yeah, yeah,
downs. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And what was your reaction when you made the decision, you prepped, everything is ready, you're going to start your journey around the world for the second time, and you find out that Leo Wilcox was also setting off around the same time, chasing the same record? Did that
You know,
motivate you or affect your mindset at all in any way?
funny, like from the beginning of my journey in cycling, I've always been mega inspired by Lil. And which I don't remember which year it was that she won Trans Am outright, but I
Yeah.
remember thinking, like, this woman can do anything. It's insane. And I've always been like super inspired. But you know how I found out when Leo was also attempting the record? I remember I'd just done Mega Avalanche with a bunch of my friends from uni and my partner. We were all in the French Alps, and we had just finished Mega Avalanche, this mountain biking thing. Um, and we were all celebrating, having some drinks and things. And my friend was like, "Oh, V, like, did I tell you? I was watching some video and I read that Leila is also riding around the world. She's also attempting the record. How cool is that?" And I remember my mind just went blank, and I was like, I don't stand a chance, do I? And then there was that thought, and simultaneously there was another thread of thoughts where I was like, I'm gonna have to work really hard at this because
Yeah.
Lael doesn't lose.
Yeah. She's the nicest person and very, very, very competitive.
And it was incredible because I know, like, because I already did like know her at that point. We had met at 2019 Silk Road, the start
Yeah.
line, the party there, and we had met there. I'd spoken to her. I have a number and things. So I was like, this is incredible. Like, yeah, I'm scared. Yeah, I'm gonna have to work so much harder, but I am so inspired at the same time. And you know, there is something about there is something about knowing someone who has won a lot of things, who is so pro at what they do, and so like efficient at this art, I would say. And then there's something about like sort of it didn't feel like I was racing against her. It was almost like I was I was like fascinated by all the stories from her training and her route planning, and I was like, this is what it should be like, this efficiency and everything. And for me, it was like really inspiring, and it did motivate me to push with the training.
I love
And
that.
I think the thing with me was, I think there was less of, oh, I'm not good enough. There was there was really less of that, but there was really a lot of, oh, if I get in any trouble, I can ask Lael how she's handling this, and I can learn from her. And there was a lot of that.
Take it as an
I remember,
opportunity. And I
yeah,
love that,
and we,
like inspiring each other, helping each other.
yeah, and I remember we jumped on a call at one point, and and I think we were both like, shit, like this is our work for the next few months.
Yeah.
Riding your bike around the world is work. Like, how insane is that? How incredible is that? So yeah, that was what my sort of thing was with that happening. And then also when when um so Lael got the record the day before my 26th birthday. So I was in Queenstown at this point. But I knew that she was going to get the record well before that. And to me, obviously, I was like extremely inspired and everything. But at the same time, I was like, didn't I almost kind of asked myself, like, didn't you already know this was going to happen because of the amount of things that have gone wrong
Yeah.
before with me? So
And I mean, especially
within the
things out of your
first
control, like the visas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So within the first week of me riding, I was throwing up at the side of the road. I had severe heat exhaustion where I couldn't stand up without taking support or something. I got offloaded from a flight. I couldn't find a way to get to the other end of Mongolia because of this flight that I got offloaded from. The other two flights I couldn't get, which meant that I had to wait a couple of days before getting to where I needed to be. Then
It's just a
I
lot of
couldn't
logistics.
yeah,
It's
yeah. Then, like, during my ride across Mongolia, I couldn't keep any food down. I lost like nearly 5 kilograms in the span of like Algi to Ulaanbaatar. That's not a lot of distance in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, like, and then facing all the horrible weather in Western Australia, for example, or just yeah, kind of I had to deal with a lot of random things in Australia. So one of the funny things was magpies.
what is
So
that?
Australian magpies are sort of related to crows, um,
Okay, they're
and
aggressive,
they
right?
they're aggressive and territorial. Well, they're territorial and they're aggressive about that. But when you're on the road for like 12, 13, 14 hours, you are always in some magpie's territory. There's a season for this to happen. So it's like spring season. And like there's in that season they're like especially quite bad. Um, I kept getting attacked by them. And I remember reading in Juliana Buring's book all those years ago that this is a thing. And for me, it was something that happens to other people because at the time, even I hadn't seen what dates she was there in for Australia and New Zealand. It didn't occur to me until I was riding across Australia and New Zealand and getting attacked by magpies that that was the season, you know?
Wow.
So,
You're like,
um,
oh crap, I guess
was
this is it.
yeah, so then you can imagine how happy I was when I hit the desert where I knew there would be no magpies. So Nullarbor was the happiest bit of riding that I did in a very long time. It was insane.
What a
Like
relief.
well, yes, it was relief from the magpies, relief from the terrible weather. The wind was behind me, and there was like turquoise ocean on one side, like
Oh,
white cliffs that you could see further down
gorgeous.
along it, and the road had like barely any vehicles on it, and it was insane. Like I was just on the go, and I was just like, "This is what it's about, right?" Like yeah, like even now I know I'm not going to get any records. Even now I know I'm probably not even going to beat my own time from back when I was 19, 20. But look at this. Like this is why I set out to ride my bike around the world again. So when I talk about feeling strong on the bike, I knew that I was going to feel strong for that section because everything else was going my way. And I also knew that I was going to get out of that and perhaps a lot of other things won't go my way. And that's fine too. And so, yeah, that was actually like a really nice bit of my ride, that I really enjoyed, and I had so many joyful
I
moments,
guess that
like,
was also some part of the lesson of like this. I'm here to enjoy. I'm here to see new things.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, don't put so much pressure on yourself. Like, you're not winning anything, but you're not also losing anything. And you're not going to get a chance to ride your bike around the world. And then a lot of things took me back to that phone call with Lael, where we were like, this is like, we get to do this. This is our work for the next few months. And it sort of took me back to that. And it's like, the moments when I forgot that that was work, that someone had paid, like, I was sponsored to do this. It was those moments where I was like, and I'm feeling good.
What a
So
privilege.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Work doesn't have to be, or like sport doesn't have to be associated with pain and hardships, logistical or physical. It can be
Yeah.
joyful. It can be like, this is what it's about. And
Yeah.
again, I was like, I had many occasions in Australia where I was hosted by very kind people, whether there were people who had got in touch with me from internet or from Instagram, or people that I met at gas stations who were like, yeah. It was like, um at one point, actually, I got hosted by someone who drove me off road like a fair few kilometers into like, they owned like a whole big bit of land. They had a farm, and this lady, like with her son and son's friend, who she had just picked up, she drove me in the middle of nowhere into this farm and gave me like this whole little kind of cabin thing to stay
Wow.
in, and cooked mushroom risotto for me, which is the best mushroom
Nice.
risotto I've
You
ever had
ever
in my
had,
entire life.
obviously.
And she was like, she and it was funny because her family, they were like all very religious, and and then, like, there were the conversation, we finished an entire, like, a huge bottle of wine that she was keeping for like an occasion, and
Oh,
she
how
found like
sweet.
that as an occasion, yeah. And her and I were like chatting until really late in the night, and we were chatting about all things, like from like religion to, I don't know, like, all like really deep topics, like, to asking me all sorts of questions, and it was so nice. Like, we had nothing in common, but the
You
humanity
connected at
aspect.
some level. Yeah.
Yeah, the humanity aspect, and and
Exactly.
the yeah, the thing where, yeah, we were just it was amazing. I had such a nice time in Australia and New Zealand. Like, though I say that those were like the party countries for me. I had a very good time. I enjoyed. I celebrated my 26th birthday with a friend who is actually from my hometown in Pune, but he lives in Queenstown, and
Oh,
he has
nice.
a mountain bike coaching business. And then we met on the internet, and he knew I was coming, so he came to pick me up at the airport, and yeah, like, we celebrated my 26th birthday together, and he invited his other friend to join along too, and it's amazing. Like, minute I landed in Queenstown, it felt like home. And like, I keep saying to my partner, we need to not only visit Queenstown and ride there on our man bikes, but we need to live there at some point, because the community there is so kind of, oh, good. Good people, yeah. But that was whole of New Zealand as well. Just really nice people. Again, being hosted by kind strangers every now and again.
Incredible the amount
Being,
of kindness you find. I was
oh,
also talking to another guest on the podcast, Kevin Bonley. He rode, I think it was across America. He did the Pacific Coast, anyways. But he also found so much kindness. It's really good to see that there still exists in the world, and you can trust someone. Because I would also be afraid to get in someone's car and be taken to this farm.
but but like,
But
that's the thing. When you work, when you meet someone, whether they're dodgy or not.
yeah,
You
yeah, you
know
can
whether to
feel it.
trust them or not. Yeah. And I have had so many moments where the vibe wasn't matching, and I found an excuse and didn't go with it. So, yeah.
And what does life look like for you now, post around the world? Are you coaching? Are you mentoring, planning any other epic ride?
I am currently preparing for Bright Midnight.
Oh, yeah.
And
Nice.
I'm also looking at Swiss Bike Adventure, that
Okay.
race across Switzerland. And I actually have a record attempt planned across India towards the end of this year. It's from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, so like north to south. And I have to do a very long way, like less than 10 days. So let's see how that goes. It's a fully supported thing that I'm doing there. Um, and I have a trans-Arctic expedition that I'm trying to put together. So my
Wow.
goal is to traverse across different regions in the Arctic, um, mostly on physical power as much as possible, visit the indigenous communities who are based like more sort of remotely. And I want to study the evolution of bushcraft over the years.
Okay.
And I want to, because again, that's another thing I've been quite nerdy about over the years, like bushcraft, um, and like, these sort of outdoor survival side of things. And so I want to study the evolution of bushcraft in these communities, the effects of climate change on these communities, and how these skills have changed over the years, but also how, which of these skills are still like traditional, and which of these are still like, but like integrated into the culture, but then which of these skills are like still very practical and used so regularly, and what are the similarities and differences between the different communities and the skill in the way that they use these bushcraft skills. So, based on where they're located, maybe they do one thing more than the other and things like that. And yeah, so that's and then I work-wise, I've been writing loads. I'm writing a book at the moment. Um,
You
I've
should.
been
You
writing
have
loads,
so much to tell. And your
and
stories from around the world, one and two, I mean,
and
mind
I've
blowing.
thank you. And I want to do more presenting and video work, on screen work, because I've been a part of so many like campaigns and things. Like I've done like lots of modeling in terms of the outdoor, with outdoor brands and things. Growing up, I was always so insecure about how I looked, and about like whether it's like any of my physical features or something else. I was always really like insecure about these things. And then I started doing like all these long distance adventures or big expeditions. Like I did an Arctic expedition, like I skied across Svalbard in 2022. Um, and then I did like other things in the Arctic, or even sort of being outside and doing all these things. It's brought home the fact that other things don't matter. The things that I'm insecure about are not the things that matter in the real world. But me putting myself out there and telling my story and sharing other people's stories, and I want to create an impact and be useful, and my insecurities cannot hold me back.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's such a powerful sentence. And I think every woman will relate to this because it doesn't matter how beautiful you are in the standard that you have in your head.
yeah,
We all feel so insecure. I heard someone say the other day that if you get out of the house as a woman and you feel good about your body and yourself, it's so rare. It's so rare. We all have so
yeah,
many
yeah,
insecurities. And I
absolutely.
think this is a very powerful message. And I also, I think we all struggled, but I think that once I started doing sports, that's when I started to feel my most beautiful, when I'm sweaty, muddy, and tired, because I
Yeah.
know my body is doing amazing things and I'm grateful for this body.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And for me, that's been there. But also another thing that I've learned over the years is it's about the impact that you create. It's about the message that you stand for, and yeah, like how you look shouldn't like matter in the grand scheme of things. I'm still gonna do on-screen work. I want to even get into like, so I think Yeah, almost. I want to do more of that, like impactful work. And I'm setting up this. So I already run a business called the Adventure Shed, through which I plan, manage, and lead expeditions and adventures. Um, but I also want to do more creative production through that. So that's another sort of goal. But one thing I'm also trying to set up is something called Looking Beyond Barriers. And I want to almost host it's not a series of talks per se, but let's call it storytelling sessions or immersive like experiences which are with kids in the age where, they're meant to decide what they're going to do in their life. So somewhere between 13 and 18 maybe. So I want to like go in schools and colleges and things like that, in the area of India that I grew up in, or in anywhere in India really, and in, I guess, where I live now. And I want to sort of bring in people that I have been inspired by, and have these immersive experiences or these storytelling sessions with those kids and with these people that I've been inspired by.
That's an
And
incredible idea and will be so powerful. It's going to touch those kids for sure and make a shift, make a change.
yeah, because I think a lot of the times you think of certain things as a barrier. Like for me, personally, I it didn't quite. I would say something to my dad, like, oh, look at this 19-year-old British dude that's riding his bike around the world. And I think my dad personally never told me that our passport would be a barrier, or us being Indians would be a barrier, or us being from somewhere or looking a certain way would be a barrier. Like, I was never told that. I was never taught that. Not in school, not by my parents. And so for me, it's always been a world where I can dream and actually do anything I wanted. But I am now especially so aware that that's not the case for majority of people. Someone at some point will hold you back, and you will need to be able to. I guess you'll have to depend on the people that have inspired you enough, in a way, like, emotionally. Not,
Yeah,
you
and
don't have to know
sometimes
those
just
people.
takes one person to believe in you,
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
someone
yeah,
to actually
absolutely.
believe in themselves and do something about whatever their goals
Mm.
and dreams are. It just takes one
So yeah.
person. Yeah, beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's what I want to do. Like, looking beyond barriers is going to be about expanding everyone's idea of what's possible. And, it doesn't have to be a sport. It's like, I'm not bringing in people who are in sport. I'm bringing in people from all walks of life that I'm inspired by. So
Beautiful.
that's the concept, and it's running alongside my work with the Adventure Shed. And I'm also like writing a lot. So writing, on screen work. I have been trying. I'm currently trying to revive my YouTube channel.
Cool. Yeah,
uh,
I want to see more of you.
yeah,
I just have a
that's
few
me.
rapid fire questions for fun.
Oof, okay, go on.
Coffee or chai?
Masala chai.
Yeah, yeah. One piece of gear you couldn't live without.
One piece of gear I couldn't live without. You know what? Shit. This is rapid fire. Okay, my Peak Design phone mount.
Ooh, okay. That's very specific.
This
Which country or countries do you recommend for a bike trip?
Ooh, I would recommend Mongolia. I
It's on
would
my
recommend.
dream list.
I would recommend Norway. I would recommend New Zealand, Peru, um, and I would also recommend Spain. Well, Spain is quite common though. Everyone knows about Spain. I would also recommend Scottish Highlands. Live here. And Ladakh. Oh my God. All right. Highest up on the list. Ladakh. Go to the Indian Himalayas. Honestly, you would not be disappointed. It's incredible.
I bet those mountains are healing. I just want to be there and just breathe that air. Um, what else do I have here? Oh, how many tires did you have to change during the entire trip?
You know what? Not that many. I only went through 10 sets of tires.
Very impressive for what, over 30,000 kilometers?
But like, yeah, 29,000 kilometers. So
Very nice. And how about chains? Did you use how many?
5.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
thought each chain was about 1,000 kilometers. So,
No, it's way more than that because the SRAM flathead chains, they last so much like longer.
cool. So for around the world, tubeless and shrimp flat chains, it's the way to go. That's what you're saying.
and dynamo lights.
Oh, I bet that was probably really good. Vedangi, it's been such a pleasure. I'm so inspired by you. You have a lot of things coming up, and I can't wait to see how everything goes, where it takes you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And that's all for today's episode. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends.